Carl Jung made a discovery that he documented in his private clinical notes, but rarely discussed publicly because it was too disturbing. After treating thousands of patients over 4 decades, he identified one psychological warning sign that appeared in his most psychologically destructive cases. This wasn't about obvious red flags like aggression or manipulation. Jung discovered something far more subtle and infinitely more dangerous. A specific way that psychologically unstable individuals relate to reality that makes them appear reasonable, even insightful, while systematically destroying everyone around them. Jung called this the conviction delusion, when someone's psychological defenses become so sophisticated that they genuinely believe their distorted perceptions are absolute truth. They don't know they're lying. They don't realize they're manipulating. Their own minds have rewritten reality to protect them from confronting their psychological wounds. Today, I'm revealing Jung's most closely guarded clinical observation about the one warning sign that preceded psychological destruction in his most dangerous cases, why this pattern is nearly impossible to detect until it's too late, and Jung's emergency protocol for protecting yourself when you recognize this lethal combination of self-deception and absolute conviction. Because here's what Jung discovered that modern psychology is only beginning to understand. The most dangerous people aren't those who know they're harmful. They're those whose psychological defenses are so complete that they've lost all contact with their own capacity for harm while maintaining absolute certainty about others' malicious intent. In 1919, Jung documented a case that would fundamentally alter his understanding of psychological danger. The patient was a 34-year-old professional who came to Jung not for obvious psychological problems, but for what he described as persistent relationship difficulties. Jung wrote in his private notes, "The patient presents as articulate, concerned about others' welfare, and genuinely puzzled by the conflicts that seem to follow him. His self-presentation suggests someone seeking to understand and improve problematic patterns." But Jung noticed something that made him deeply uncomfortable. Every person this patient described as problematic, manipulative, or harmful shared strikingly similar characteristics. They were all supposedly secretly jealous of his success, emotionally unstable despite appearing normal, manipulative in ways only he could detect, spreading lies about him behind his back, trying to undermine his relationships and career. Jung initially assumed these were legitimate concerns about genuinely difficult people. But as he investigated further, a disturbing pattern emerged. When I spoke with individuals the patient described as malicious, I found people who seemed confused, hurt, and genuinely concerned about his well-being, Jung documented. Their descriptions of interactions with the patient contradicted his accounts in fundamental ways. Jung realized he wasn't observing relationship problems. He was witnessing what he came to call reality rewriting, a psychological defense mechanism so sophisticated that the patient had genuinely convinced himself that his own harmful behaviors were actually protective responses to others' attacks. The patient wasn't consciously lying. His psychological defense system had literally altered his perception and memory to maintain his self-image as a victim and protector, rather than the common denominator in all his relationship failures. Jung wrote, "This case revealed the most dangerous form of psychological self-deception, when defense mechanisms become so complete that the individual loses all capacity for accurate self-observation while maintaining complete conviction in their perceptions of others." Jung discovered that conviction delusion operates through what he called defensive projection with memory revision, a complex psychological process that literally rewrites personal history to support distorted self-perception. Stage 1, initial projection. When someone with deep psychological wounds encounters situations that threaten their self-image, their unconscious mind immediately projects their own harmful tendencies onto others. Jung observed, "If they cannot tolerate their own capacity for cruelty, they will perceive cruelty in others' neutral actions. If they cannot acknowledge their own manipulative tendencies, they will detect manipulation in others' genuine care." Stage 2. Selective attention. The person's attention becomes hypertuned to evidence that supports their projections while filtering out contradictory information. Jung noted, they notice every micro-expression that could indicate malice while remaining blind to clear demonstrations of kindness. Their perceptual apparatus becomes organized around confirming their projections rather than gathering accurate information. Stage 3. Memory reconstruction. Perhaps most dangerously, Jung discovered that conviction delusion involves unconscious memory revision. The person literally remembers events differently than they occurred, always in ways that support their victim narrative. Jung documented, the patient genuinely believes his revised version of events. This is not conscious deception, but unconscious reality reconstruction. He has convinced himself so completely that he passes every test of sincerity. Stage 4. Certainty crystallization. The final stage involves what Jung called psychotic certainty without psychosis, absolute conviction in distorted perceptions while maintaining apparent rationality in other areas. Jung wrote, "The individual becomes immune to contradictory evidence because their entire psychological system is organized around maintaining their revised reality. Questioning their perceptions feels like questioning reality itself." Modern neuroscience research by Dr. Kahneman and Dr. Tversky on cognitive biases confirms Jung's observations. During intense psychological defense, the brain's confirmation bias becomes so extreme that it essentially creates alternate versions of reality that feel completely authentic to the person experiencing them. Through decades of clinical observation, Jung identified the specific warning sign that preceded psychological destruction in his most dangerous cases. Complete immunity to self-doubt, combined with absolute certainty about others' hidden motivations. Jung wrote, "The dangerous individual never questions their own perceptions while claiming extraordinary insight into others' unconscious intentions. They exhibit what I call selective omniscience, complete blindness to their own psychological processes paired with claimed transparency into others' inner worlds." This warning sign manifests in specific observable behaviors. Behavior 1. Motivation, attribution. They consistently tell you what you're really thinking, feeling, or intending, especially when their attribution contradicts your actual internal experience. You're just saying that because you're jealous. I know you don't really care about me. You're obviously trying to manipulate me. Jung noted, they speak about your inner world with more certainty than you feel about it yourself, while showing no curiosity about whether their perceptions might be inaccurate. Behavior 2. Evidence immunity. No amount of explanation, clarification, or contradictory evidence can shake their convictions about your character or motivations. Jung observed, they interpret your attempts to correct their misperceptions as further evidence of deception or manipulation. Your protests become proof of their accuracy. Behavior 3. Victim omnipresence. They consistently find themselves victimized by people who exhibit remarkably similar patterns of behavior, yet they never question why this pattern repeats. Jung documented, the dangerous individual attracts endless evidence of others' malice while remaining completely unconscious of their own role in creating these dynamics. Behavior 4. Righteous recruitment. They subtly or overtly attempt to convince others to adopt their perceptions, often through concerned sharing of observations about mutual acquaintances. Jung wrote, "They cannot rest until others see the world through their distorted lens. Their projections require collective validation to maintain psychological stability." The diagnostic question. Jung developed a simple test for identifying conviction delusion. Ask the person to consider the possibility that their perception might be incorrect. A psychologically healthy person will show some capacity for self-doubt, even about strongly held perceptions. They might say, "I could be wrong, but," or "It's possible I'm misreading the situation." Someone trapped in conviction delusion will respond with increased certainty, elaborate explanations for why doubt is impossible, or accusations that questioning their perception is itself evidence of malicious intent. Jung noted, "The capacity for appropriate self-doubt is a sign of psychological health. Its complete absence, especially combined with certainty about others' hidden motivations, indicates dangerous psychological instability." Jung classified conviction delusion into 3 progressive levels of danger, each representing escalating psychological instability and destructive potential. Level 1. Personal reality distortion. The individual maintains generally accurate perception of external reality, but develops systematic blind spots about their own behavior and its effects on others. Jung observed, "They function normally in most contexts, but create confusion and conflict in intimate relationships, where their defensive projections become activated. Warning signs include consistently surprised by others' negative reactions to their behavior. Unable to understand why relationships follow similar problematic patterns. Genuinely confused when accused of behaviors they don't remember or perceive differently." Jung noted these individuals often remain functional in professional settings, where interactions are more superficial, but destroy personal relationships through unconscious projection patterns. Level 2. Collective reality distortion. The person begins organizing others around their distorted perceptions, creating shared delusions that feel real to multiple people. Jung documented, "They possess an uncanny ability to convince others to adopt their projections. Through selective storytelling and emotional manipulation, they create group consensus around their distorted reality. This level becomes dangerous to entire social systems, families, workplaces, friend groups, as the individual unconsciously orchestrates collective projection episodes." Jung wrote, "One person's conviction delusion can possess an entire group, leading to scapegoating, exclusion, and systematic psychological abuse of innocent individuals." Level 3. Archetypal possession. The most dangerous level involves what Jung called possession by transpersonal contents, when someone's individual personality dissolves and they become a channel for archetypal energies beyond their capacity to integrate. Jung observed, "The person disappears behind archetypal identification. They speak and act not as individuals, but as representatives of cosmic forces, justice, truth, divine will, or sacred mission. These individuals often develop what appears to be extraordinary charisma and conviction, making them extremely persuasive while being completely detached from personal responsibility or reality testing." Jung wrote, "Archetypal possession creates individuals who can justify any behavior in service of their imagined cosmic mission. They become capable of extraordinary cruelty while maintaining complete conviction in their righteousness." The escalation pattern. Jung discovered that conviction delusion follows a predictable escalation pattern. Initial projection. Subtle misattributions of motivation that seem like personality differences. Defensive crystallization. Projections become fixed beliefs, immune to contradictory evidence. Social recruitment. Others are drawn into supporting the distorted perceptions. Reality enforcement. Anyone who questions the shared delusion becomes a target. Systematic exclusion. The group organizes around eliminating threats to their shared projections. Collective possession. The entire system becomes organized around maintaining the delusion Jung emphasized. Recognition at stages 1 or 2 allows for intervention. By stage 4, extraction becomes the only viable option. Jung developed what he called the consciousness defense method for protecting yourself when you encounter conviction, delusion in others. Phase 1. Reality anchoring. Jung taught patients to maintain connection to their own psychological truth regardless of others' projections. Keep a private journal documenting your actual thoughts, feelings, and motivations, Jung instructed. When someone attributes characteristics to you that don't match your internal experience, this record serves as a reality anchor. Jung emphasized the importance of trusted witnesses, people outside the projection field who can validate your authentic character and behavior patterns. Phase 2. Projection recognition. Jung developed specific techniques for recognizing when you're being used as a projection screen. Notice when someone's emotional intensity toward you exceeds the actual significance of your interactions. Pay attention to accusations that feel foreign to your internal experience. Observe whether their perception of you remains fixed despite contradictory evidence. Notice if they seem more interested in being right about you than in understanding you. Jung wrote, "The projector needs you to be what they perceive you to be. Your actual character is irrelevant to their psychological economy." Phase 3. Strategic non-engagement. Jung discovered that attempting to convince projectors of your authentic character actually strengthens their projections. Don't defend against projections, Jung advised. Defense implies the accusations might be true. Instead, simply state your truth once clearly and refuse to engage in repeated explanations or justifications. Jung's principle: you cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Projections serve unconscious psychological functions that logic cannot address. Phase 4. Protective extraction. When projection escalates to collective level, Jung recommended strategic withdrawal as the only viable protection. Sometimes the most conscious choice is to remove yourself from unconscious systems, Jung observed. This isn't defeat, it's psychological survival. Jung emphasized that attempting to heal or fix conviction, delusion in others often results in being consumed by their psychological dysfunction. Jung's most profound insight about conviction delusion was that it serves a specific psychological function, protecting the ego from confronting intolerable truths about itself. The individual who cannot bear to see their own capacity for harm will unconsciously organize their entire reality around projecting that capacity onto others, Jung wrote. This creates the illusion of purity, while unconsciously acting out the very behaviors they condemn. Jung discovered that conviction delusion often develops in people who experienced severe childhood trauma that shattered their self-image, built identities around being good, helpful, or morally superior, cannot tolerate normal human ambiguity and moral complexity, never learned to integrate their shadow aspects consciously. The tragic irony is that people trapped in conviction, delusion often become the very thing they most fear: manipulative, harmful, destructive, while maintaining complete unconsciousness of their transformation. Jung wrote, "They sacrifice their souls to preserve their self-image. In avoiding the truth of their own darkness, they become consumed by it." The collective danger. Jung warned that conviction delusion becomes particularly dangerous during collective stress, wars, economic crises, social upheaval, when entire populations become susceptible to shared projections. History's greatest atrocities were committed by people convinced of their own righteousness, Jung observed. The capacity for evil increases exponentially when it's combined with absolute conviction in one's own moral superiority. This is why Jung considered the recognition of conviction delusion essential not just for personal protection, but for collective psychological health. Remember Jung's crucial insight about psychological danger. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. People who cannot accept their own capacity for harm will inevitably make others the repository for everything they cannot bear to acknowledge about themselves. The warning sign Jung identified, absolute conviction about others paired with complete immunity to self-doubt, reveals someone whose psychological defenses have become so complete that they've lost contact with their own shadow while projecting it onto everyone around them. Your protection lies not in trying to convince them of your authentic character, but in maintaining conscious awareness of what belongs to you and what belongs to their projections. Jung spent his life mapping these dangerous territories of human psychology not to create paranoia, but to create freedom. Freedom from unconscious manipulation, from projection fields, and from being recruited into others' psychological delusions. When you can recognize conviction delusion, you step outside its influence. The most dangerous psychological patterns lose their power the moment they're seen clearly. If you've encountered these warning signs in your relationships, share your experience in the comments. Recognition of these patterns can protect others from psychological manipulation disguised as concern or insight. Subscribe for more insights into Jung's clinical discoveries about navigating human psychological complexity. Your consciousness is your shield against the most dangerous forces in human relationships. Use it wisely. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.